Theseus kills the Minotaur.
There can be great rewards in a cross-curricular topic like ancient Greece, but it takes a good deal of planning to get the most out of it. At the British Museum, they've got a lot of experience in advising teachers how to integrate units of work and breathe life into ancient history. The museum's head of schools and young audiences is Richard Woff.
One of the most important things for teachers to think about is not feeling that they have to cover the whole of the curriculum through any one topic, to plan strategically across the whole year that they're working on. And so for ancient Greeks, I think it's a matter of thinking which other curricular areas do they think they can handle effectively through the ancient Greeks, and not feel that they have to force the ancient Greeks into maths and science and geography, though they can do those. But to select maybe 3 or 4 curricular areas that stem naturally from the topic of Greece and give the children an opportunity to link that cross-curricular work back to where they started in looking at the Greeks.
In Programme 1, we saw Year 4 teacher Bernadette Solomon focusing on opportunities for English, citizenship and art within her scheme of work. In this programme, she'll reflect on this scheme and then seek advice on ways of strengthening it further through ICT.
What's happened with the national curriculum is that there's been an emphasis on the Greeks for history. And I think that's been a very good thing. I think that most people would agree that the quality of history teaching that's been going on since the conception of the curriculum as single subject has been a strengthening thing, and that it's helped teachers to understand what progression is in terms of history thinking. I think it's a good thing at the same time, though, for teachers to think about how they can broaden that into other areas of the curriculum to join it together.
Early on in her scheme of work, Bernadette ensured that her Year 4 pupils were able to access some powerful images on real Greek artefacts.
They're beating sticks, they're beating the branches. So what might you think that pot is used for?
It's used for collecting the beginning of it.
What do they do with olives sometimes? And what do they get out of them? Olive oil.
How to approach the way they look at antiquities has certainly helped with starting with everyday materials. It makes the children aware that these people lived and lived a life like we live a life. And that's how really we should be looking at a topic such as the Greeks.
Very often museums are used at the end of a scheme of work or a piece of work as sort of like a treat in a way. Something that the children look forward to or is offered to make them feel good at the end of something. And some schools do still work in that way. We tend to think that's not the best way to use it. It's better to actually try and take your museum visit and make it a more integral part of the scheme of work rather than just being a reward at the end.
The memory of the museum visit was still fresh when Bernadette challenged the children to recreate a series of Greek pots from broken pieces and present their findings back in the classroom.
Now, can you tell me what you saw in your pot?
I found that it was Odysseus tied to the mast, and his men had beeswax in their ears.
What else can you see on the picture, Brendan?
Birds with women's heads.
And who are they, these birds with wings?
Sirens.
They're the sirens. The pots, that was problem solving. It was also to give the children the feel of what it might be like to be an archaeologist, that pots are not just found miraculously in the ground, that you have to know what you're looking for basically, and you have to be able to recognise what things might be.
So they've got pots on their heads, yes. What are they filling it up with, do you think?
Water.
Water. And where are they getting their water?
The fountain.
Yes. What does that tell you about their houses? Did they have taps in the bathroom and kitchen sink and taps and things?
No.
No, it means they had to go and get their own water. They didn't have these particular set of Greeks did not have plumbing, so they didn't have water carried to their houses.
What I think can really bring the Greeks to life is to take something that's complicated and then allow the different themes or topics to emerge from that one thing. So teachers can still explore the same sorts of things, athletics, sport, religion, women, everyday life, but they're exploring them in the context of a single complicated item. It might be a picture from a pot, or it might be some strange practice that the Greeks engaged in. But very often these things are linked into all sorts of different aspects of the culture, and that's a way of teachers linking them together in a way that the kind of books that teachers are often using don't do. So I think getting to some sources, just getting one or two genuine things from ancient Greece, genuine artifacts or cultural phenomena that they can use is a really strong part of how you might develop the curriculum and the teaching.
Bernadette knows that if there's one way to build on her teaching, it's through ICT.
Children will be fascinated by that.
Absolutely.
Today, she's revisiting the British Museum to ask the advice of their e-learning resources officer, Paul Clifford. Together, they're exploring the museum's new Ancient Greece website.
It's authored at Key Stage 2, and the website is broken down into chapters, and the chapters cover things like the Acropolis, Athens, gods and goddesses, Sparta and war.
Bernadette's also keen to integrate some practical mathematics into her scheme of work.
If we look at another chapter, and I'm going to choose Acropolis because it's got possibly one of my favourite games, so you basically have a model of the Acropolis, and you can click on all the different parts of the temple, you know, what the buildings were for, how they were built, etc. And the challenge here is you actually get to build your own Acropolis, your own temple, and along the way you have to make kind of like certain choices. So the first choice is whether it's going to be Doric or Ionic, what style. I'm going to choose that one there, Ionic. And then I have to choose how high I want this temple to be. One of the things that I've done with this particular game is that I've given children a budget, and I've assigned different values to the different types of decoration, obviously the size of the temple, the different carvings, etc., and then tried to get them to design a temple which will come in under the budget they've been given. Which is an interesting one because then it combines kind of like mathematics and making choices that are not just kind of aesthetic.
I can hear people laughing. Laughing? You wouldn't be laughing if she was in here. Why wouldn't you be laughing if she was in here? There's a very good reason why you wouldn't be laughing.
She can kill you.
She can kill you in a very particular way. In a very, very particular way. Let's have down here.
She can turn you to stone.
She can turn you to stone. Because she's a Gorgon, and her name is Medusa. In order for these people from the past not to just appear as rather peculiar, you do have to understand that those beliefs are different. And I think you get that with myths. The children will often come back to us and say, well, these myths, they're not true. Rather than recognising that for many people in the past, or many cultures now, myths are fundamentally true. It's that they believe them in that particular way. And I think that's the key thing, to bring those people to life. 3 things that almost all stories have. And what are those 3 things? We're going to go right to the back and try and catch you.
The beginning, the middle and the end.
Excellent. Good. So we have a monster with snaky hair or staring eyes. And let's put our monster with snaky hair and staring eyes, let's put it there.
Richard uses a technique called story sums
Now,
to show children how to recognise myths in Greek
who can
art.
tell me
As long as there are enough
who
visual
the
clues,
character
a
is
story
on
can be
the
identified by a
right-hand
single
side
image.
of
Obviously, when we're teaching extended writing, that's one of the lessons is really to instill into the children is the proper sequencing of stories, and that they don't just write a beginning and an end, that there are bits in the middle and that there are incidents and there's a resolution at the end. Using a story that they already know and getting them to just throw out what has struck them about a story and the incidents in a story in whatever order, and recording it very quickly. then they have to think of how the story is sequenced, what did come first in the story, and it trains their minds to sort of think logically through a story.
Right, I'm going to walk behind and you're going to shout them out as we walk, okay? So we have a monster
with snaky hair or staring eyes, and man with sword and winged boots, and cutting off head, and god Hermes or goddess Athena equals
Perseus and the Gorgon. There we go. That's the way we get it. There's obvious strength in myths in the National Literacy Strategy at Key Stage 2, particularly years 5 and 6. Extended legends and epics and poetry are an aspect to be looked at, and that's fantastic for Greeks. So English is very strong for myths, of course. Art and design is very strong for myths too. There's obviously a historical element because every myth has its cultural context, and so children can see something happening in a myth and think, what does that tell us about the beliefs of the ancient Greeks? Why doesn't Odysseus, he's still got 8 men left, why doesn't he and his 8 men, why don't they take out their swords and kill him on the spot? Why don't they do that? Because they could, couldn't they?
Because Odysseus is a good man.
Well, yeah, I know, but, you know, even good people have to do bad things sometimes. And if somebody's been coming up eating you, you're okay to have a go at them. There's quite a strong citizenship or PSHE possibility there. And we had part of that in the session this morning, where one of the children suggested that Odysseus shouldn't kill the Cyclops because he'd be seen as being a bad man. And so a teacher would have the opportunity to say, well, the Cyclops has been doing something very bad, but you're saying that reacting against that in a particular way also makes the person who reacts bad. So there's an issue, a dilemma that you could explore with the children. And these kinds of things arise naturally from the subject matter, whereas there may be other curricular areas where you'd be forcing it to try and move. So I'm always in favour of trying to look at cross-curricular work which stems naturally from the work that you're looking at, rather than a kind of mechanistic way of doing it.
Learning about the systems and beliefs of this ancient world will make children question their own rights and responsibilities.
What kind of government was there in Athens? What would you call it?
A democracy.
Was it a
At Key Stage 2, this may well be their first opportunity to question how social and political structures underpin civilization. Inspired by the wealth of curricular links as well as the interactive resources on ancient Greece, Bernadette feels more confident that she'll find new ways to inspire her pupils. And she's convinced that it's important to continue refreshing the way we teach ancient Greeks.
It is relevant because from these ancient civilizations that we get a lot of our own civilization, the ideas, the inventions. We've improved on them, but the origins are there in ancient civilizations, whatever those ancient civilizations are. And our language is very influenced by these ancient civilizations and the root of our words. And in order to understand the present, we have to understand the past.